Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this narration of the web series Very Clever Primates, taken from Reddit with the author's approval. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 8. Was this really necessary, Doctor? Quite a while passed in that room, between the sudden understanding by these soldiers that the Valan, despite our hospitable nature, were not to be trifled with, and the fact that it never occurred to them one of us would be recording and transmitting. Everything that was said and done in this place, well, needless to say that General McCullen was not too pleased at his current situation, nor at the look of satisfaction on my face as I sat in that chair, quite eager to find my bed once more. My job was done. All of my people now knew what trials humanity faced. Although I did feel as if I owed the General an answer to his question. Yes, I did feel this necessary, I replied, looking over at Ska'ana, whose eyes were glued to the monitor showing the pride of Allah, clear as day for anyone to see. We came to you seeking a peaceful understanding. Well, that's not correct, I said, leaning forward, trying to give the General my best impression of the insufferable grin that he wore. Your people came to us. They knocked on our door before they even knew our intentions. Do you want to know what the first human we ever met said to us? I asked, canting my head to the side. The General, still lost in planning, failed to notice my obvious self-righteousness. For someone who was reading me like a book for the whole rotation, he certainly was having trouble now. Something that wasn't cleared, I'd imagine, the General said, his tone off somewhat. It was not the reaction I was expecting. Perhaps I expected a bit of panic in his tone. The display of power my leaders provided should have given him a hint that we were not to be toyed with. Yet the General's stature did not change. His eyes moved back and forth. He schemed even when faced with demise. Somewhere in that primitive brain of his, he thought of ways to find victory in this. He still felt that there was a way out of this. And for that, I commended him. The General could not know failure. He said that we would be attacked when we first arrived here, and he was right, though I did not expect by someone in a position of power like you. I had hoped that humanity's leadership wouldn't be so, cold, I muttered, disappointment dripping from my tone. The General rolled his eyes back, a smirk once again returning to his lips as he peered at me after a brief moment of thought. I am a leader of military operations, but not the leader of the country. The leader of my country has no idea you came here. The leaders of this world had no idea that aliens made landfall. Humanity as a whole woke up this morning to see a giant planet of a ship in the sky with no idea why it's there. They have no idea of your location. They have no idea that we intercepted your horribly decrypted messages. You may think yourself a victor here, but to everyone else on this planet, there is no one being held hostage, he said, his tone far too dark and grim for my liking. My scales turned orange in irritation. So, are you planning on killing me, General? Let your entire world believe my people came here to attack the vastly technologically benign species. My leaders are already likely upset over this. You could very well have damned any chances that our species could get along without heated tensions. Everything in the past few days. Why did you bring us here? What is your goal? Just tell me why, I exclaimed, my scales turning a bright red, the human soldiers pointing the guns upward, ready to fire. And yet, the General raised a hand, the soldiers easing from the battle-ready positions into more neutral stance. I am not going to kill you, he said, closing his eyes. The game's over. I was going to release you sooner, had we not debated for hours regarding the nature of humanity. Had I known our conversation wasn't private, I wouldn't have been more subtle. I acted out of desperation. I wanted something only you could provide, Doctor, he said, reaching into his pocket, his brow furrowing as he pulled out a picture of a human with no fur on their head. My colors swirled in confusion. Now what was the General plotting? The world is a cruel place filled with cruel people that'll step on anyone to get to the top, myself included, he said, placing the picture on the table and sliding it forward. You've learned everything about our physiology in a matter of days. You were even able to reverse engineer our immune systems to be able to resist things that it took humans millennia to overcome. With that kind of information, we could have found cures to almost every human disease. We could have overcome the will of God. We could have made this child's life carefree again. In other words, I wanted an alien in my corner so that this bureaucracy crap could have been avoided," he muttered, his brow furrowing in irritation. "General, do you realize how idiotic that is to say?" I asked, my scales turning orange once more. "We would have gladly given you this information if you'd asked us for it. And how do I know that? How does any human know that? How can you tell me for certain that you come in peace? How does any human know that you are a people of your word? You could win our trust and enslave us with a few shiny gadgets. You could arrive here and change the very way our society works. You could—" I tuned out as he began ranting, my scales changing into a deep green of panic. By the gods, the first human I talked to was so paranoid it drove him insane. He rambled on and on about his mistrust, despite our numerous attempts to tell him that we did, in fact, come in peace. We wanted to visit our neighbors and talk to them. Not a single Valan thought about enslaving anyone. My green scales turned violet as I looked at the quickly disheveled man. I realized, after a bit of thought, why he was the way he was. The man was scared. We did represent change. I knew my people well enough. There was no way the more friendly Valan wouldn't take the chance to dig into the emotions of our new neighbors. There was no way our people could leave the new things well enough alone. We were an old race, and we needed something new. Humanity was shiny, new, and full of wonder. We simply assumed that our neighbors were just as excited as we were to meet, likely due to the fact of humanity's literally knocking on our ship, wanting entry. We suspected that humans would be nervous, but we never suspected full-on paranoia like this. We embraced the new, unknown things of the universe. This human both wanted to and didn't want to. He wanted to make sure everything safeguard was in place before they moved forward. He wanted to know he always held the upper hand in any potential conflict that arose. This human could not know failure. I tuned back into the general's rambling when the door behind us opened up. The human soldiers immediately went into a standstill, straight positions, raising their hands over their forehead as the woman walked through the doors, her expression seething with anger. The general also slipped out of his rambling, saluting the human woman. I couldn't help but think that humans being sexually dimorphic made it way easier to identify male from female. It was easier than waiting until one heard the prefix of their names. My eyes glanced over to the table as the woman marched forward, her styled, short hair, fur bobbing with every step. I noticed the picture on the table that the general had slid towards me. I took the opportunity to slip it into my coat pocket before it could be noticed. Everyone standing around us, so after I took the picture, I followed suit, standing up and attempting to match the stance of all the humans took. Clearly, this was an individual that reserved respect, and quite frankly, I didn't want to piss off any other humans today. "Madam President," the general trailed off, yet he was met with only a snapping of fingers from the younger human woman. "Don't Madam President me, you son of a bitch. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any idea what craziness is out there?" she exclaimed, huffing, sliding her hand through her hair as she turned to face me. "I'm Debbie McCullen, by the way," she said, her tone frantic, and she turned back to the man. My gaze shifted between the two. They shared the same name. How odd. "I did what I thought was necessary," the general replied, "to ensure the safety of our people." "Then you're supposed to come to me with a game plan. What part of Commander-in-Chief don't you understand? You don't go rogue, hiding in this remote shithole, hoping that you're able to weasel technology out of an alien species. Oh yeah, I've gotten to speak with one of the Valan myself. They're not too happy with you right now. It was all I could do to get them to stay on their ship and not invade us for their people that we had no idea were being held captive," she said. Her eyes filled with a rage that no color any Valan could produce could match. I feared for this general's safety. I feared for the safety of the side of the planet. This woman was going to explode with so much hate and anger that all of the cosmos would be warped into resembling a skull. But gods, I was in love. "Congress can't agree on anything, and they're all American. How do you expect the world to treat these aliens? What happens if some warlord gets a hold of their technology? What if they figure out how to turn it into a weapon?" the general barked, my scales turning bright orange. There he was again, assuming that we would just hand out our technology. The nerve of some people. However, despite the general's paranoia, I was starting to become amused that I had the front row seat to a governmental meltdown. I nearly giggled. We figured it out when we crossed that bridge. This is why our leaders need to speak to each other first, you incompetent idiot. Stealing technology now, before diplomatic relations take place, is only going to ensure our planet will be blown out of orbit, she hissed, practically seething with the hate for this general. I almost started to feel sorry for the man, if it didn't feel so good that I was right. But then the commander-in-chief, as I knew her, began leaking from her eyes, and she looked at the general, who, during this entire belittlement of his character, stood tall and proud. She placed a finger on his chest, her breaths becoming staggered, and she shook her head. General Patrick McCullen, what you did was treason. I have to explain to your granddaughter now that her grandpa is a traitor. You went rogue and put not just us, but the whole world at risk just so that you could feel important, she seethed, pointing at a nearby soldier. I want him arrested. I want these aliens seen out and back to their vessel. Now, she snapped. I sighed in relief, looking to the warrior cast members that were still in the dark about the whole thing. Skarna looked towards me, her scales a dull grey from exhaustion. Are we being attacked now? She asked, huffing. The bride's here, so that means we shoot stuff now, yeah? She muttered. I shook my head, giving a faint yawn myself. I am fairly certain we're going to be escorted back to our vessel and seen home now, I said quietly, and Valan. Skarna groaned, standing up. Oh, thank the gods, we're going home. The human soldiers did what they were told, escorting both the warrior cast members and the general out of the room. And yet, something didn't quite sit right with me. Something felt off. My hand moved into my pocket where I could feel the picture I had taken earlier. The general's paranoia was likely one of many voices of similar opinions. This needed to stop now if the humans were going to trust a Balan. And so, I did something quite foolish. I walked up to the commander-in-chief, currently keeping her composure as best she could. She looked at me, giving me the faintest of smiles, trying to make light of the current situation. I'm sorry that General McCullen kept you here. We're not all like that, I promise you. Humanity is full of good people. Please don't hate us for the actions of one man, she said, her voice raspy and broken. I shook my head, attempting to give a human smile of sympathy as I pulled out the picture. The president's skin turned quite pale as I held it in my hand. The general said that I can help fix this. I think he may have been right, I said, looking down to the woman. The warriors I came with can go home, but I'm here now. Your general had a point. Why shouldn't I use the knowledge I have about your species for some good? In other words, I want to treat this child's condition. The commander-in-chief paused for a moment, looking down at the picture, then looking back at me, completely dumbfounded. Even after all of this, you still want to help us, she said. I nodded quite plainly. She laughed, shaking her head, and held the side of her face with a palm. My daughter's in for quite a treat, it seems. I'm willing to trust you, Valan. Oh, well, that explained the name. End of chapter. This is a special thank you to the one, the only, the legendary Eric Hino, who has become the only Tier 6 patron. I just want to thank the T5 patrons and channel members. Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Estrella the Dreamer, Try Again 95, Fudic Yol, Meridian 117, Elysia, Jordan Bucksbaum, Angry Marine, Albarden Gusta, and Barkey. Thank you very much. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. There are links down below, both to support this channel and for the author of this fiction. Anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.